The small chapel of Dusty Creek stood silent beneath the pale morning light, its weathered wooden walls whispering stories of countless vows spoken within. Inside, the worn pews were empty, save for Emily Carter, standing alone at the altar. She clutched the delicate lace of her wedding dress, her knuckles white against the fabric, eyes fixed on the heavy oak doors that had swung open only moments before, and then shut, leaving her abandoned in the stillness. The late spring sun filtered softly through stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows onto the dusty floor, but it could not warm the chill that gripped her heart. Emily's gaze dropped to the scattered petals that once lined the aisle, now trampled and withered, mirroring the fragile hope she had carried into this day. Her chest tightened with a mix of disbelief and a sorrow so deep it threatened to pull her under. The preacher's quiet voice broke the silence, his tone gentle but edged with sympathy as he stepped forward. "Miss Carter, I'm so sorry. Thomas, he left before dawn. No note. No word." Her lips parted but no sound came. The preacher's eyes held hers for a long moment, then he nodded toward the door. "There's no sense waiting here now." He turned slowly, leaving her to the hollow echo of footsteps fading into the morning. Dusty Creek was a small frontier town nestled between jagged cliffs and rolling plains, where the late spring of 1892 brought both beauty and hardship. The land was harsh and unforgiving, much like the lives carved out by those who dared call it home. The town's few wooden buildings huddled close along a dirt main street, their facades worn by sun and wind. Here news traveled fast and so did rumors. Emily had arrived in Dusty Creek with hope cradled in her heart, believing that love might finally offer her a fresh start. The wedding had been planned for months, a promise of permanence in a transient world. She had envisioned a life with Thomas Granger, a man whose steady hands and earnest smile had seemed a balm to the wounds left by years of loneliness and loss. But now, standing alone at the altar, those dreams felt shattered, fragile as the cracked stained glass. The townsfolk, gathered quietly outside the chapel, whispered among themselves. In a place where a woman's reputation was as precious and precarious as the scarce water from the nearby creek, Emily's abandonment was more than a personal heartbreak. It was a scandal that threatened to unravel her place in the community. The preacher's warning echoed in her mind. "You must be careful, Emily. People will talk." Her shoulders straightened, the first flicker of resolve igniting beneath the weight of despair. She would not let the whispers define her. Not yet. The afternoon sun climbed higher as Emily stepped out onto the chapel's creaking porch, the townsfolk parting silently to let her pass. Faces were etched with sympathy, curiosity, and a touch of judgment. Mrs. Hawthorne, the stern widow who ran the general store, offered a tight nod. The Wilson boys, lanky and awkward, averted their eyes but exchanged knowing glances. Even the preacher lingered near the steps, his expression one of quiet concern. Emily wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and walked toward the modest boarding house where she had found shelter since arriving in Dusty Creek. Each step was weighted with the heavy knowledge that she was now exposed, alone and vulnerable in a place where survival meant standing firm against both the elements and the stares of others. Inside her small room, she sank onto the narrow bed, the fabric of her dress still clinging to her skin. The silence was deafening. Her mind replayed the last days in vivid detail, the laughter shared with Thomas, the plans whispered under starlit skies, and then the empty chair beside her at dinner last night. The realization that he had fled without explanation prickled like a fresh wound. Outside her window, the town went about its business, the blacksmith's hammer ringing, horses neighing in the distance, and the steady murmur of conversation drifting up from the street. Life continued without pause, indifferent to her private agony. A soft knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Mrs. Jenkins, the kindly housekeeper, holding a small basket of food. "Thought you might need a bite, dear," she said with a warm smile that reached her eyes. "Don't listen to the talk. Folks can be harsh, but there's good among them too." Emily nodded, grateful for the kindness. "Thank you. It means more than I can say." As the day faded into evening, Emily wrapped herself in a worn quilt and sat by the window, watching the sun dip beyond the dusty horizon. The sky blazed with streaks of orange and purple, promising a new day, though she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. The next morning brought no solace. The town's whispers had grown louder, and Emily felt their weight pressing down like the unforgiving desert sun. At the mercantile, she overheard hushed speculation. Why would Thomas leave her here of all places? Poor girl, must be more to the story. A woman alone in Dusty Creek? It's dangerous. The sting of judgment was sharp, but beneath it was something else, a quiet admiration for her courage to remain. It was then that Emily realized that surviving Dusty Creek would require more than endurance. It would demand strength she hadn't yet fully summoned. That afternoon, she visited the chapel once more, this time to seek solace in the familiar wooden pews. The preacher was there, arranging hymnals on the simple altar. He glanced up as she entered, offering a small nod of acknowledgement. "I don't know what to do now," Emily confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas left without a word. "How am I supposed to face the town? To face myself?" The preacher's gaze softened. "Sometimes, Miss Carter, life tests us in ways we don't expect. But out here in the vastness of the frontier, we learn to stand on our own 2 feet. You're stronger than you realize." His words settled over her like a faint promise, fragile but persistent. Emily sat quietly, letting the stillness of the chapel enfold her. Outside, a breeze stirred the prairie grass, carrying with it the scent of rain and distant freedom. That evening, as twilight deepened and the first stars appeared, Emily stepped onto the porch of the boarding house once again. The world was vast and uncertain, but within her, a spark of resolve began to glow. She would not let Thomas's betrayal define her story. Dusty Creek was unforgiving, yes, but it was also a place where new beginnings could take root, if only one dared to seize them. As the town settled into the quiet of night, Emily's thoughts turned to the future. Uncertain and daunting, yet somehow hers alone to shape. The road ahead was unknown, but the first step had been taken. And with it, the painful yet necessary journey toward healing and hope had begun. The morning sun cast long shadows across Dusty Creek's main street, the town stirring to life with the familiar sounds of creaking wagon wheels and the steady rhythm of horses' hooves on dirt. Emily Carter had spent the dawn hours poring over the dwindling contents of her modest larder, her thoughts far from the simple breakfast she prepared. The sting of abandonment still clung to her, but beneath it, a fragile thread of determination wove itself tighter. As she stepped outside, the soft clatter of approaching footsteps caught her attention. A tall figure, dust-coated and purposeful, emerged from the haze of the nearby plains. Luke Bennett was a stranger to Dusty Creek, a man whose presence stirred as much curiosity as caution among the townsfolk. He carried the weight of the open frontier in his steady gaze, a quiet strength tempered by the scars of a past he did not readily share. Luke's arrival had been as sudden as the spring rains, and yet, in the short days since, his kindness toward Emily had become a small beacon amid the shadows clouding her days. Today he approached her doorstep with a basket of freshly baked bread. A gesture simple yet profound in a town where trust was hard-won. "Morning, Miss Carter," Luke greeted, tipping his wide-brimmed hat. "Thought you might be needing something to eat." Emily's lips lifted in a faint smile, the first genuine curve since Thomas's departure. "Thank you, Luke. That's very kind of you." Their eyes met, and in that brief exchange, a quiet understanding passed between them. She saw in him the echoes of solitude she knew all too well, and perhaps, a shared yearning for something beyond the endless horizon. Word of Luke's kindness spread quickly. In a town where strangers were often met with suspicion, his gentle defense of Emily against the cruel gossip swirling like dust storms had not gone unnoticed. When a group of men gathered outside the saloon, their voices low but sharp with derision, Luke had stepped forward without hesitation. "Leave her be," he said in a calm voice that brooked no argument. "She's got more courage in her little finger than any of you lot." The men exchanged uneasy glances before dispersing, their mockery silenced by the quiet authority Luke wielded. Emily, watching from the shadows, felt a flicker of something she had not dared to hope for: protection, not just from threats outside, but from the loneliness that had settled over her like a shroud. In the days that followed, their acquaintance deepened. Luke's past remained a closed book, but his actions spoke volumes. He helped repair the fence around Emily's small garden patch, his hand steady and sure despite the calluses earned from years of hard labor. He shared stories of the frontier, of endless skies and wild places, of the unforgiving sun and the fierce beauty that clung to every ridge and valley. Emily listened, absorbing the tales with a mixture of awe and longing. Through Luke's words, the vastness of the land seemed to offer a promise of new beginnings, a chance to rewrite the chapters that had left her heartbroken and adrift. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, Luke invited Emily to join him on a ride beyond the town's edge. The offer was unexpected, tinged with an unspoken hope that kindled a spark within her. They rode side by side across the rolling plains, the wind tugging at their coats and the scent of sagebrush filling the air. Emily spoke of dreams she had once held close, of a home built on trust, of laughter echoing through open fields. Luke shared fragments of his journey, the losses that had led him to wander, and the quiet resolve that kept him moving forward. As twilight settled, the horizon stretched out before them, vast and unending. It was a world of possibilities, but also of dangers lurking beyond the sun's last rays. Emily's heart fluttered with a mix of fear and hope, a fragile balance she had not felt in years. Yet, even as the promise of freedom beckoned, a shadow loomed. News had reached Dusty Creek of a ruthless land baron, a man whose greed threatened to choke the life from the territory. His agents moved with calculated menace, seeking to seize control of the land and the livelihoods of those who called it home. The weight of this threat settled over the pair as they rode back toward town, their conversation turning to plans and precautions. Luke's eyes gleamed with determination, his protective instincts sharpening. "We can't let him take what's ours," he said firmly. "Not without a fight." Emily nodded, the resolve in her voice growing stronger. "Together then. We stand for Dusty Creek." Their alliance was more than a joining of hands. It was a partnership forged in the fires of shared hardship and the quiet hope of something better. As the stars emerged overhead, Emily felt the first true stirrings of trust and courage. The frontier was vast and wild, but with Luke beside her it seemed less daunting. A place where new stories might yet be written. The open plains stretched endlessly beneath a wide cerulean sky, the golden waves of tall grass rippling in the gentle breeze like an ocean of light. Dusty Creek lay behind them now, a small cluster of weathered buildings fading into the distance as Emily Carter and Luke Bennett rode side by side, their horses' hooves stirring up soft clouds of dust along the winding trail. This land, vast and unyielding, held both promise and peril, a canvas for new beginnings painted with the brushstrokes of freedom and uncertainty. Emily's fingers rested lightly on the reins, her gaze drawn to the horizon where the sun hung low, casting long shadows that danced across the rolling hills. For the first time since Thomas Granger's betrayal, her heart felt a fragile hope, tempered by the quiet strength she found in Luke's steady presence. She glanced over, catching the briefest flicker of a smile on his weathered face, and in that moment, the loneliness that had once engulfed her seemed to recede. As they rode, Emily spoke softly of her dreams, of a home where laughter filled the air, where trust and love could grow like the wildflowers dotting the prairie. Luke listened intently, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding born from his own scars. "I've lost more than I care to count," he admitted, voice low and steady. "But out here you learn to keep moving. The land doesn't wait for you to heal. It just keeps turning." The truth in his words resonated with Emily, who had spent too many years waiting for a past that would never return. She found solace in Luke's resilience, and in the way his quiet determination seemed to carve a path through the uncertainty. They rode farther still, the endless sky above them a reminder of the freedom at their fingertips. Luke's knowledge of the land became apparent as he pointed out hidden springs and safe trails, his skills as a ranch hand evident in the ease with which he navigated the terrain. Emily felt a stirring within her, a vision of a future where she could belong, not as a woman defined by betrayal, but as a partner in the rugged dance of frontier life. But beneath the vast beauty lay a growing shadow. News had reached Dusty Creek of a ruthless land baron named Silas Crow, a man whose greed knew no bounds. His agents moved like wolves, intent on seizing control of the territory, threatening to strip the land from those who had called it home for generations. The weight of this threat settled heavily over Emily and Luke as they rode back toward the town, their conversation turning to the dangers that loomed. "He's been buying up claims, pushing families off their land," Luke said grimly. "If we don't stand together, Dusty Creek won't last long." Emily's jaw tightened, resolve hardening in her eyes. "We can't let him win. Not without a fight." The bond between them deepened, forged by shared adversity and a mutual desire to protect what they held dear. As twilight painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, they made their way home, the promise of a new beginning tempered by the storm gathering on the horizon. In the days that followed, Emily and Luke's partnership grew stronger. They worked side by side, tending to the small garden Emily had started, repairing fences and helping neighbors weather the uncertainty that Crow's shadow cast over the town. Their alliance became a beacon of hope for others, inspiring quiet courage amid the fear. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars pierced the darkening sky, Emily and Luke sat by a campfire outside the boarding house. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows on their faces as they shared their fears and hopes. "I want to build something here," Emily confessed, voice soft but steady. "A life worth living." Luke nodded, his gaze fixed on the fire's glow. "And we will. But it'll take more than hope. We need a plan." Together they began to dream not just of survival, but of thriving, of a community united against the encroaching threat, of a future where Dusty Creek could stand strong. The open plains awaited, vast and unpredictable, but for the first time, Emily felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. With Luke by her side, the wild frontier seemed less daunting, a place where new stories could be written, one courageous step at a time. The morning sun rose pale and slow over Dusty Creek, casting a soft glow on the weathered buildings gathered along the dirt main street. The town's usual quiet hum had a new edge, an undercurrent of tension that rippled through the air like the restless prairie wind. Emily Carter and Luke Bennett rode into town together, their horses kicking up small clouds of dust as they made their way toward the center of the settlement. The shadow of Silas Crow, the ruthless land baron whose ambitions threatened to choke the life from Dusty Creek, hung heavy over the community. The days since their return from the open plains had been marked by whispered conversations in dimly lit rooms and furtive glances cast toward the horizon. Crow's men had grown bolder, pressing claims and issuing threats that unsettled even the hardiest of residents. Emily and Luke understood that waiting for the storm to break was no longer an option. They needed to act, and quickly. At the small town hall, a modest wooden building with peeling paint and creaking floorboards, Luke called together a gathering of townsfolk. Men and women who had long endured the harshness of frontier life filed in, their faces etched with worry and weariness. Mothers clutched children close, while farmers and ranchers exchanged grim looks. The weight of Crow's encroachment pressed upon them all. Luke stood before the crowd, his voice calm but resolute. "Silas Crow thinks he can take this land from us. But Dusty Creek isn't just a place on a map. It's home. And if we don't stand together, we'll lose everything." Emily stepped forward beside him, her presence a steadying force. "We've all felt the fear. But fear alone won't protect us. We need a plan. Something clever enough to outsmart Crow's men and strong enough to hold our ground." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. The community, battered but unbroken, was ready to rise. Luke outlined a strategy born of knowledge and necessity. They would create a diversion to draw Crow's men away from the heart of the town, allowing a smaller group to gather evidence of the land baron's illegal tactics, falsified claims, intimidation, and bribes that could be brought before the territorial authorities. It was a risky plan, requiring courage and careful coordination. Emily listened intently as Luke detailed the roles each would play, her mind already racing through the steps needed to rally support. She knew that unity would be their greatest weapon, that only by standing together could they hope to withstand the onslaught. Over the next days, the town buzzed with quiet preparation. Neighbors who had once kept to themselves now exchanged tools and stories, forging bonds forged in necessity and newfound trust. Emily took on a leadership role, organizing supplies and coordinating communication between groups. Her resolve deepened with every passing hour, her earlier despair replaced by a fierce determination to protect the life she was beginning to rebuild. The Wilson family, long-standing ranchers on the outskirts of Dusty Creek, pledged their help in exchange for a share of cattle, their support bolstering the community's strength. Children helped gather firewood, and elders shared wisdom born from years of hardship. The town was transforming, its fractured pieces knitting together into a tapestry of resilience. As tensions mounted, Crow's men increased their pressure, riding into town with hardened faces and veiled threats. Their presence was a constant reminder of the stakes, but the townsfolk met them with quiet defiance. Luke's calm leadership and Emily's unwavering spirit inspired a courage that spread like wildfire. One evening, under a blanket of stars, Emily and Luke convened with the key members of their group. Maps were spread across a rough-hewn table, plans refined with precision. Every detail mattered. The timing of the diversion, the safe houses, the trusted messengers. "We don't just fight for ourselves," Emily said, her voice steady and clear. "We fight for Dusty Creek, for the future of everyone who calls this land home." Luke nodded, the firelight flickering in his eyes. "And we'll do it together." The stage was set for a showdown that would test the mettle of a community bound by courage and hope. As the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, Dusty Creek braced itself. Not just for battle, but for the chance to reclaim its destiny. The dawn broke pale and fragile over Dusty Creek, casting long shadows across the rough wooden buildings that lined the main street. The air hung heavy with anticipation, a quiet tension settling over the town like a low fog. Inside the dimly lit saloon, faces once marked by doubt now bore the hardened expressions of resolve. The townsfolk, united by circumstance and courage, prepared for the confrontation that would decide the fate of their home. Outside, Luke Bennett stood by the hitching post, checking his revolver with steady hands. His eyes scanned the horizon where Crow's hired guns were expected to arrive, their dark silhouettes soon to emerge from the distant hills. Beside him, Emily Carter adjusted the brim of her hat, her gaze unwavering despite the swirling nerves beneath. "We have to be ready," Luke murmured, voice low but firm. "This is our moment." Emily nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. For Dusty Creek, the plan, crafted with care and cunning, unfolded with deliberate precision. A small group led by Luke would create a diversion near the old sawmill, a decaying relic on the outskirts of town, drawing Crow's men away from the town center. Meanwhile, Emily and a trusted few would move quickly to gather the incriminating evidence of Crow's illegal dealings, hidden in documents stashed at the mercantile. As the first riders appeared on the ridge, the town held its breath. Crow's men, hardened and ruthless, charged toward the sawmill, their guns glinting in the morning sun. Luke met them head-on, his revolver flashing as bullets cut through the air. The clash was sudden and fierce, the sound of gunfire echoing across the plains like thunder. Emily watched from a safe vantage point, heart pounding as she coordinated the others, moving swiftly between buildings to secure the damning papers. The tension was palpable. One misstep could unravel everything they had worked for. Back at the sawmill, Luke fought with a calm ferocity born of necessity. Each shot was measured, each movement deliberate. The hired guns pressed hard, but Luke's knowledge of the terrain gave him an edge. When a bullet grazed his arm, a sharp pain ignited, but he pressed on, fueled by the determination to protect the town and the woman who had come to mean more than he dared admit. As the battle raged, Emily's group slipped away with the evidence, their path perilous but swift. The documents, once secured, would expose Silas Crow's corruption to the territorial authorities, undercutting his claim and rallying outside support for the embattled town. The gunfire gradually faded, the hired guns retreating with fewer men than they had come. Luke, bloodied but unbroken, returned to the town square where Emily awaited, her eyes shining with relief and fierce pride. But the fight was not yet over. Crow himself arrived shortly after, riding into town with a posse larger and more formidable than before. His presence was a dark storm, his face twisted with rage and entitlement. He dismounted with a sneer, the townsfolk standing their ground despite the palpable fear. Emily stepped forward, her voice ringing clear across the tense silence. "Your time is up, Crow. We have the proof. Dusty Creek belongs to its people." Crow laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think a few papers will stop me? This land's mine by law." At that moment, the sheriff's posse, summoned by the evidence Emily and her group had sent ahead, arrived with authority. The lawmen moved swiftly to arrest Crow and his key men, the threat finally contained. With the land baron defeated, the town exhaled a collective breath it had been holding for months. Relief and hope mingled in the air as neighbors embraced and children laughed once more in the streets. Emily and Luke stood together amidst the crowd, their shared victory a testament to the power of unity and courage. But even as the dust settled, Emily's gaze hardened. Thomas Granger had returned, his eyes searching hers with a mixture of regret and desire to reclaim what he had abandoned. She met his gaze steadily, the wounds of betrayal still fresh but no longer defining her. "This town, this life, it's mine now," she said quietly but firmly. And I won't let anyone, least of all you, take it from me again. The confrontation with Thomas was swift and resolute, closing a painful chapter and opening the door to a future forged on Emily's terms. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Dusty Creek celebrated not just a victory over a greedy land baron, but the resilience of a community bound by hope and the promise of renewal. Emily and Luke, standing side by side, knew the road ahead would still hold challenges, but for the first time in a long while, they faced it together with strength, with love, and with a future worth fighting for. The sun rose warm and steady over Dusty Creek, casting a golden light that seemed to breathe new life into the weary town. The hard-fought victory against Silas Crow had not only secured the land, but had also rekindled a spirit of hope and renewal among its people. Streets once shadowed by fear now bustled with activity and purpose, the air filled with the sounds of hammers striking nails, laughter of children, and the steady rhythm of progress. Emily Carter stood on the porch of her modest home, the morning breeze tugging gently at the edges of her shawl. Her gaze swept across the town she had come to love. Not just a cluster of buildings, but a community bound by resilience and shared dreams. The journey from abandoned bride to a leader in Dusty Creek had been a winding road, marked by pain, courage, and unexpected alliances. Yet here she was, standing firm and proud. Luke Bennett approached quietly, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the rising sun. He carried a bundle of plans, sketches and notes for expanding the local ranch and improving the town's infrastructure. His rough hands, calloused from years of labor, folded the papers with care as he joined her. "We've got the Wilson family ready to start on the new fence line," he said, his voice steady but warm. "And the town council approved the well project. Clean water'll make a big difference." Emily smiled, the weight of responsibility lightened by the tangible progress around them. "It's more than just survival now," she said softly. "We're building a future." Her role had evolved beyond the shadows of abandonment and betrayal. The townsfolk looked to her not only for guidance but as a symbol of strength and hope. She took that trust seriously, organizing meetings to plan community gardens, education for the children, and measures to protect the town from future threats. Luke's acceptance into the heart of Dusty Creek had been gradual but complete. Once a mysterious stranger, he had become a protector, a partner, and a steady presence in Emily's life. Their bond, forged in hardship and tempered by shared purpose, was a quiet testament to the power of trust and respect. Evenings found them working side by side, repairing fences, tending livestock, or simply sitting beneath the vast expanse of stars, sharing stories of past wounds and future dreams. Each day deepened their connection, weaving a tapestry of companionship that promised more than mere survival. The town itself was healing. The general store flourished under Mrs. Hawthorne's watchful eye, the schoolhouse echoed with the laughter and learning of children, and the once empty town hall now served as a gathering place for celebrations and planning. Dusty Creek's heartbeat grew stronger with every passing season. Emily often reflected on the path that had brought her here. From the cold silence of the chapel where she had once stood alone, to the warmth of a community that had embraced her. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they were reminders of resilience and the courage to embrace new beginnings. Luke's hand found hers one evening as they watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. "We've come a long way," he said quietly. Emily squeezed his hand, her heart full. "And there's still more to do. But I'm ready." Together they looked ahead to the challenges and joys that awaited, plans to expand the ranch, protect the town, and nurture the fragile seeds of hope they had planted. The future was uncertain, as the frontier always was, but it was theirs to shape. In the quiet moments between hard work and heartfelt laughter, Emily and Luke found a shared purpose that transcended the hardships they had endured. Their story was no longer one of abandonment or fear, but of healing, partnership, and the unyielding spirit of Dusty Creek. As night settled over the town, the lights from windows glowed like stars fallen to earth, a testament to lives rebuilt and dreams rekindled. Emily and Luke stood together, ready to face whatever the dawn might bring, united in love, trust, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Dusty Creek thrived beneath a sky vast and unending, the seasons weaving their quiet tapestry over the land that Emily Carter and Luke Bennett had helped to heal. Families grew, laughter echoed through open fields, and the once fractured community blossomed into a place where hope and hard work walked hand in hand. The dusty streets now bore the footprints of children chasing dreams, and the air carried the scent of blossoming wildflowers mingled with the warmth of wood smoke from hearts rekindled by resilience. Emily stood on the porch of the general store, watching the morning unfold with a heart both heavy and light. The years since the land baron's defeat had brought growth and peace, but her thoughts often drifted back to the journey that had led her here. The trials endured, the bonds forged, and the love that had blossomed in the unlikeliest of places. Luke's steady presence beside her was a quiet reminder of how far they had come. As the sun climbed higher, a figure approached down the main street. A traveling preacher whose worn coat and gentle eyes carried the weight of countless stories. He paused before the store, tipping his hat in greeting. "Miss Carter," he said softly, his voice carrying a tone of familiarity tinged with reverence. Emily's gaze met his, memories stirring like distant thunder. "Pastor Jenkins," she replied, the name a thread tying her past to her present. The preacher's eyes held a quiet understanding as he spoke of the years that had passed, the hardships faced, and the grace found in forgiveness. His presence brought closure to the lingering shadows of abandonment and betrayal, a gentle balm to the wounds once left open. "I heard about your fight for Dusty Creek," he said, his gaze steady. "You've done more than survive, you've built a legacy." Emily nodded, the weight of his words settling deep within her. She thought of the town's children, the families who had found shelter and purpose here, and the land that had once seemed so cold and unyielding now blossoming under their care. Luke joined her on the porch, his hand finding hers with a familiar warmth. Together they watched the preacher move on, his figure blending into the horizon like a whispered blessing. As twilight descended, painting the sky with strokes of lavender and gold, Emily and Luke stood side by side, their silhouettes framed by the gentle glow of lantern light. The journey from isolation to community, from betrayal to trust, had transformed them both. Their love was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the courage to embrace new beginnings despite the scars of the past. The town's heartbeat echoed softly around them, the laughter of children, the murmur of neighbors sharing stories, the steady rhythm of lives rebuilt. Dusty Creek was more than a place. It was a living story of hope, courage, and the unyielding power of second chances. Emily breathed in the cool evening air, her gaze lifting to the stars beginning to pierce the darkening sky. In their light she saw the promises of tomorrow, a future unwritten, waiting to be shaped by those brave enough to dream. Luke's voice broke the silence, a whisper carried on the breeze. "Ready to write the next chapter?" She smiled, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the fading daylight. "Always." Together they faced the horizon, two souls intertwined by fate and choice, standing firm against the vast unknown. In the quiet embrace of Dusty Creek, beneath the endless sky, their story continued, an enduring tale of love, redemption, and the courage to begin again.